Hey there. Welcome to the Flute 360 podcast. I'm Dr. Heidi K. Begay, and I'm a flutist, educator, coach, and podcaster. My God-given mission is to serve you. I am passionate about guiding you, the modern-day flutist, to discover your unique voice on and off the stage. The goal of this podcast is to help you thrive both as an artist and as a musicpreneur. Go ahead and grab some espresso, your favorite notepad, and let's get to it. Today's episode 200 is titled, Let's Celebrate Together. Hey there, Flute 360er. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is episode 200. That deserves a huge celebration from all of us. So I'm over here so giddy because I get to share the stage with 5 phenomenal flutists from across the globe. In episode 200, you're going to hear these 5 amazing women talk about their pain points, their struggles, how they overcame said pain points, and how they are celebrating their victories, how they are being a pioneer within their musical community. And I want to highlight this because I want you to know they are just like you. I wanted to highlight the Flute 360 listener in episode 200 because this is a huge milestone for all of us, not just for me and for the other guests, but for all of us. This is our stage. So I want you to take notice that these listeners are just like you. I want you to soak in their words, and I want you to be inspired, because from this interaction, inspiration can unfold. Learn with them, soak it in, and I want you to be motivated where you find the courage to forge your own path, just like they did. So without further ado, we are going to dive into the conversation. Enjoy yourself, get your favorite drink, and tell me how the conversation impacted you. Go to my website at heidikbegay.com or email me at heidikbegay@gmail.com. The last thing that I will leave you with is, after episode 200, episode 201 will air the following week. After that, I'm going to take a month off. So during this time of rest and relaxation, I encourage you to check out the 5+ episodes that these women recommend. At the very end of the conversation, they are recommending specific episodes that impacted them. I want you to take out a pencil and paper, jot down these 5+ episodes, and tune into that content during the month off. We will resume the podcast on May 24th, 2022. Thanks and enjoy. Hey there. Welcome back to another Flute 360 podcast episode. Today is a very special day, and that's because I am sitting with 5 phenomenal ladies from across the world, and we are going to celebrate episode 200 together. So thank you, ladies, for being here. And for you, the Flute 360 listener who's listening to this right now, I want you to soak it up. I want you to celebrate with us. And I want you to recognize that the people who I am talking to right now are listeners and flutists and teachers and professionals just like you. So I'm going to pick their brains. We're going to talk about their journey, what they've learned along the way, and I cannot wait to start this conversation. A quick announcement before we dive into the topics. There are transcriptions available for this episode and every episode past episode 200 and beyond. So you can start looking for those transcriptions at heidikbegay.com. But without further ado, this episode is so special to me because it's all about community. Like I said, I am sitting here with 5 wonderful Flute 360 listeners. And beyond that, they are doing tremendous things in their community. They are performers, educators, clinicians, adjudicators, authors. And I am beyond excited that they are here. And pre-recording, I was telling them that, when Flute 360 started, the first year or so, it was like, hello, is anybody there? And now, fast forward 4 years into episode 200, I get to sit with flutists from across the globe. We have flutists from Finland, Canada, Florida, the UK, and Texas. So thank you, ladies, for being here.
We're happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Exciting. And congratulations on 200 episodes. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Jay. Yeah, no, it's a huge milestone for all of us. And so thank you. Yeah, this is going to be a really fun time. Okay, so I think the first thing that we can do to get this party started is kind of popcorn around the room, and you can introduce yourselves, share anything that you would like with the listeners, and I think that would be a great starting point. So let's start with you, Liz.
Okay, my name is Liz Harguest. I'm a mother to 5 grown-up children and a grandma to 6 grandchildren. And that's my starting point. My flute career is my second career. I was a physiotherapist for 20, 30 years. I'm passionate and very happy about my flute teaching. And I specialize in Suzuki flute teaching as well. And I was recently introduced to the guest conductor giving a masterclass to 2 of my students who are performing concertos in our local cathedral. And I was introduced as flute teacher extraordinaire. And that really made me very happy today, really happy. I have performed with my local orchestra for 16 years. We've performed several works. Every work that I have performed with the orchestra, I have performed from memory because I'm totally blind and have no eyesight. So I can't read Braille and play the flute. And I've written an article that says, I wish I'd learnt Braille with my feet. So that's my starting point.
That's amazing, Liz. Yeah. Wow is right, Jay.
Wow.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
That's pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
I love your podcasts. I came across them quite accidentally on a little hand machine that I have, not a phone or anything else. I was just looking for anything fluty, and I love all the podcasts, and I listen to them when I'm maybe running on my treadmill or lying in bed or walking or anything, and I feel that I'm with you. I'm sitting next to you. It's so exciting.
Oh my goodness, that is music to my ears. And the funny thing is, Liz, you are not alone. A lot of my Flute 360 listeners who email me, they say, I'm listening to you at the dog park. I'm listening to you on a hike. So us Flute 360 people are very active. I love it. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Paula, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paula Mims. I live in Texas. I'm originally from Ohio. I'm a private flute teacher, president of Texas Flute Society, and I assist Kathy Blocky with her social media.
Thank you for being here. And Paula and I go way back through the Texas Flute Society, and we've mingled together with Kathy and her work. So I know Paula very well. And we got to meet actually when she was a graduate student at Texas Women's University. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
And Sana, who's in Finland.
Hello. Well, my name is Sanna, as you said, and my flute journey is way different than yours. I started to play flute when I was 12 years old, and I played it straight at the orchestra, and then I had to cut it. I cut it about 15 years, and now that I am grow up and I'm 40 years old, I started again, and now I'm learning. I'm a student in Kuopion Conservatorio. I wanted to be a musician, and I want to so bad be a flute player, professional flute player. And music is one of my passions. And flute is one of my passions. They've always been, and there always will be.
That's amazing.
And I'm very thankful to be here because I found Flute 360 about 2 months ago, and I was like, wow, oh my, this is what I want to hear. This is what I want to learn from other people. And I love all the episodes what I've heard so far.
Oh,
Amazing. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here.
oh my goodness, the pleasure is all mine. And I love what you said. You started off as a young girl and then, life happened and then you came back to it and you were able to rekindle your love for the flute and start it back up again. Hats off to you. Bravo. Because, most people aren't as fortunate. And for you to be courageous and brave and come back to it is so inspirational. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jay in Canada.
Hi, my name is Jay Marsh, and I'm a freelancer in Toronto primarily, and I've recently become a recording artist. I just released an album in November.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to pick your brain as we're talking about everyone's journey because you and I speaking last week or 2 weeks ago, you really motivated me and showcasing how you're going about that journey and going about the recording process. So I can't wait for the listeners to hear about that.
Be happy to share.
Cool. And Kiara in Florida.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiara Aho. I am a flutist and educator based and originally from Miami, Florida. I finished my master's at Austin Peay State University 2 years ago, right when the pandemic hit. And it's been kind of a slow and gradual growth in my professional life. Just recently, I got a playing gig from a friend that I'm going to be doing next month. So I'm very
Yay.
excited to get back on stage. And I'm also just writing blogs and things for my website because I feel that there's things that people should know and stuff.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, we follow each other through social media and you posted your latest blog post through LinkedIn or somewhere and I read it and great writing, great information. And thank you so much for contributing to our community.
It's a pleasure.
Make sure you share how to find your blog. I'd love to read it.
Of
Let me know
course.
how to find you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely. And that's a good point, Jay. I'm so glad you brought that up because we are going to unlock and discover what everybody is doing right now in their flute community. So like Paula mentioned Texas Flute Society and work that she's doing through her studio. Jay mentioned her album. Kara is mentioning her blog. Liz is mentioning what she's doing through her studio and the work she's doing there in Sana and how you're learning and being a student at the conservatory. I want links to all of this. So if there is some way that a Flute 360 listener can tap into your work, the better. Because again, this is your stage today, and I want 360 listeners to be motivated, inspired from what you're doing, how you're contributing to the community so we can all follow along, because that's what it's all about, right? So with that being said, I think that's a great way to segue into some questions that I want to ask you. And the funny thing is, these were questions that were specifically brought to my attention from other 360 listeners. So listeners from California and Indiana and Iowa emailed me and said, I want to know blank from your guests today. So this is completely led by all of y'all, which I absolutely love. So the first question is, what new opportunities are out there within the music scene that you've explored, and how did you discover it? What steps did you take to pursue and accomplish this? Is there anybody specifically who feels like really gung-ho to start? You can raise your hand and we can start with you. Everyone
I'll
go
start.
through. Okay, great. Thank you.
The most recent opportunity that I've seen, and actually I didn't really search it on my own. It was actually through taking Catherine Eminente's music teacher's playbook course. And she said that one of the biggest ways that you can get students is to sign up for OutSchool and be a teacher on OutSchool. And I know a lot of people who as soon as they started teaching throughout school, they were able to grow their studio through there.
That's amazing. And I'm so glad that you brought up Catherine and the work that she's doing because it's very forward thinking and she's contributing so much to our community too through M School and all of her different classes. And I'm so glad that you were able to pull nuggets out from that class and start implementing it within your world. So bravo to you.
Yeah.
That's exciting. And Jay, let's go counterclockwise. So let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of a reluctant recording artist, I have discovered, and I'm actually writing a little bit about that experience and how I wish I had been brave enough to think I could do that much earlier. But within that whole process, which a lot of people, some people are familiar with, or at least have seen other people go through it, what I discovered that the classical world has not really grabbed onto is the independent marketing opportunities. And I think all of the marketing things, whether you've got music to share or teaching or, other experiences, I think those marketing pieces, I think Paula is probably, has a lot of experience with that from the social media side, but also just the way we build our world. And Heidi, you're doing that, and you're sharing a lot of that on your podcast, which is great. And that's one of the things I really valued in what you're sharing. But I think those things that the recording, especially in the classical world, needs to take advantage of those marketing pieces, and we're not really doing that. So that's what I've been exploring and gathering all that information so I can share that with people too. So that's what I've been working on.
That's
That's pretty
amazing.
amazing.
Yeah. So, Jay, I'm kind of curious. You mentioned, Jay, in that conversation, right, a couple of weeks ago, that you were learning from like hip hop artists and R&B artists. Can you talk about that and why was your focus directed there and what was the intention of that move? What did it teach you? Because when you said that a couple of weeks ago, I was like, huh, and it made me perk up. So I would love for you to share that.
For sure. In Canada, we have a fairly generous, I mean, debatably, but granting system for our Canadian artists because we have a smaller, population, and so it's harder to actually find places to play and earn money and that kind of thing. And they want to encourage us to record, for example. So there's one granting body called Factor. It's Foundation for the Arts, encouraging recording and whatnot. And so I received a grant from them for my project. And in return, I wanted to thank them by joining the jury. And so on this jury, there's not a lot of classical people. So I'm getting singer songwriters, there were some rap artists, there were some country people. Like there's a wide variety. And what I got to see was their marketing plans. I saw, variety, like from really sketches to fully realized plans. And I was stealing. It's like, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to use that and use that. And then I discovered that a lot of these indie places, musicians had teams that I hadn't considered as a classical musician. It wasn't something that was even mentioned or was part of what I understood it meant to do classical music. And so I went hunting for people to help me. I was also on social media, looking for things. So I found one place called Brandman, and Sean at Brandman has a really great sort of community of artists, but mostly rap and hip hop, some blues and whatnot. So it's a completely different community, and they're all based in the States because there was nothing really in Canada that I could find it was accessible either as an independent marketing person to help me or a community like that. So I'm finding great value in that, and then from there I found somebody else who works in heavy metal bands, and he's a promoter for that. And so I'm really grabbing things from all walks of life, and I'm finding that really valuable because they're actually working a lot harder on the other end of recordings, where I find that classical music, we do a recording and it kind of stops and it becomes a very expensive business card. And people hand that out and then they don't do a lot with it afterwards. And I think I wanted to see how far I could take this journey in new ways, and learning from other recording artists from other genres to see if I can do something about increasing our profile in the recording industry, increasing our streams, or like not on my own little lonesome, but learning from these folks and seeing if I can share that and eventually, help us almost rejoin the active music community that's out there. So it's been an interesting time.
I love it. Yeah. And so I'm kind of curious, like, well, because you're talking about specifically like being a recording artist, right? And it sounded like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like you were adding recording for your albums and things like that a little bit later within your musical journey. Is that correct? This is like
Oh,
been a, yeah, yeah.
So I have a friend who's a composer, and we've been playing together quite a bit. And she's actually been on one of your podcasts. And her name is Elizabeth Rom, and she said, "Go get a factor grant, and I will write you a piece." So I blame her entirely for this extraordinary journey. So I went and wrote a grant and tried to figure out how granting works and did all that. And I came up with a story, and I had all kinds of ideas, and one idea led to another, and I ended up commissioning 4 new pieces for flute and from Canadian composers. And I had a theme around which I wanted them to write. And then that was my project. And so then I got the grant, and she wrote me 2 pieces. And I have other new pieces for flute. And really my whole point of the project, and I was struggling to find a reason to record, and because there are far better flute players out there that have recorded the standard repertoire, and I'm still, like, as I mentioned, a reluctant recording artist. It wasn't something I thought I would ever do. So I wanted to, well, what can I actually bring to the table? And so I wanted to bring new music for flutists, and I want to make the parts available so someone else can go play it and record it and do a different job of it, or make it themselves, right? And so I wanted to make it also Canadian. And so there's a lot of layers to my storytelling about this project.
That's phenomenal. And so there's a couple gold nuggets that I want to highlight, and we will move over to Sana. But what I'm hearing is, and how I'm interpreting your story and your journey is, you saw, or a pain point of yours was, marketing and business skills weren't really, and they're starting to pick up now, but they weren't really taught to us when we were in school. And if you want, to wear that recording cap, right? You're like, okay, well, how am I going to get this done? And so you're emulating the people that are doing it. You're seeking the doers, and you're saying, oh, okay, like, yes, I'm a flutist, I'm in this classical world, but there is an R&B artist over there and a heavy metal person over there. And you're being smart to try to find a solution to your problem. And you're pulling and pulling, and you're leading with curiosity. You're intrigued, and you're saying, all right, like, this is a little different, but if it means me searching for these answers to find solutions to where I'm at to get this dream off the ground, then I'm going to do it. And it looks different, and it can be messy at times, but that's how we learn. That's how we grow. And as you are acquiring this information, this was the question that I was going to ask earlier. My brain had a brain fluff. With the information that you're starting to acquire now, not that I'm putting more on your plate, but are you considering packaging this knowledge and offering it into a digital course for others to learn your?
I am a little bit, yes. I've started some writing. I've started packaging some like 1-page PDF like tips or like checklists and something like that. I just started writing a couple weeks ago about this very topic, trying to digest it and put it all out on paper. So actually I'm kind of working that way. I've actually been asked, so there's the Canadian Music Centre is a group that has associate membership of composers, and so they look after composers but also provide opportunities for them. And they're the ones who, they have a label called Center Discs, and that's who I recorded on. And they've asked me to possibly work up a workshop for their composers on how to approach a recording in a new way, so that we're not just putting out traditional, hey, buy this recording, and then they market it, they put it out through Naxos, so all the distribution is there. But there are different ways to do it, and we don't have that knowledge yet in the classical world of the way, the Spotify's work. I mean, like, even the streaming isn't geared towards our slightly, longer tracks and that kind of thing, but we can still do things in a slightly different way and learn how that works so that we can get in on the game and then make changes from the inside. It's sort of what I'm hoping, because most people who are independent recording artists, they don't have a whole team of a label like a Sony or a Warner's to do all these things. But I'm also seeing, like, I'm doing videos for each of my tracks. I'm doing some live to tape and for online presentations. I'm going to cut those up and re-release them on Spotify as singles if the sound is good enough. Wish me luck. So, I'm seeing how we can repackage ourselves. Instead of just the album, we have to think of the single, right? Because that's how people digest us. But I've also discovered that the joy of meeting other people from other genres, like one of the things early on, I was just noticing that it's the marketing companies and the streaming companies that are putting us into silos. You like hip hop, therefore all the algorithm is going to send you just hip hop. You like classical, so all the algorithms are just going to send you classical. But I like Lil Nas X, and I like, some, old German metal, and I like classical, and I like, but I like different kinds of classical, and I want to be able to experience that, and it's a lot of work to get past those silos. I know why they're doing it. It serves the marketing purpose, and some people enjoy that. But because I went and hung out with these people, I said, hey, check this out. Might be different from what you're used to, but what do you think? And everybody's going, wow, that's really great. And so they're liking it. And it's like, well, why wouldn't they? But they're saying, oh, classical has this whole, the radio stations like to market, like, they market classical music as a soporific. This will put you to sleep, this will relax you. It's like, okay, Wagner does not relax me. Can I just say that? So, unless it's Siegfried Edel, which I just played yesterday. It's so beautiful. But, there are some composers that are just not relaxing. There's also contemporary music that classical music fans are also not getting. So even within the classical world, we're being sectioned off and we can't find each other. And so I've become curious about how do we fix that? Right. So that's one of my things too.
Oh my goodness. Well, keep going because you are a leader, right? All of us are like, yeah. Oh, shoot.
I kind of want to interject.
Please.
Back to what Jay was saying, like, yeah, I totally agree that there are many composers that relax you. Like, I mean, when I hear like composers like, for example, Rachmaninoff, I'm like headbanging. It's like heavy metal before heavy metal was a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, but we get shoved into these little boxes, and so we kind of accept it. But also, classical musicians have to work so hard to keep up a particular level of playing at a certain degree. And not that the songwriters and the other genres work as hard, but I think they work harder on the back end. And by the time we get to the point where we're performing or recording or doing anything, we're tired because we've worked so hard so many years. So I think that's kind of why we're willing to go, okay, I just don't care. Just hire me for the gig. I'll come in and I'll play. And like the marketing side, that's for something else. And I recognize that in myself too, but I've come to a lot of personal growth as a performer, and like using the term recording artist still feels like the shirt's too tight. I feel a little bit uncomfortable using that term because it's new for me. It was not something I ever envisioned for myself. I was not in that headspace, but here I am, and so I'm going to do everything I can to do that, and also to honor the composers that wrote for me, and to give this gift back to my flute community so that they can enjoy this new music. And so that's what's keeping me allowing myself to use these terms so I can, proselytize for the new music.
That's amazing. And you are a leader, obviously, with these steps that you're taking, and a pioneer. And I know being a pioneer, like from what I've heard from other pioneers in our music community, it can feel lonely. And I loved how, if you're a listener right now and you're not watching the YouTube version, when Jay said, I'm tired, she patted the skin under her eyes and she's all, I'm tired. And yeah. Gotta get, yeah.
I'm also hot. It's hot in my room. I'm dying of the heat here.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your journey. And there are so many gems there. Thank you for being so honest and open. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to Sana. What unique opportunities are you pursuing right now, and how are you going about it?
Well, one of the biggest opportunities I have right now is kind of build my own way to be a student and to get that goal, being professional and maybe one day start teaching others. And the ways to get there and find other flutists and talk to them and try to find out how to teach myself how to create myself, what can I do better, and other stuff like that. So I'm walking the path that you guys have already been. You understand what what I'm saying? and I want to make that journey something for me, and then hopefully I can give that opportunity also to my daughter who plays flute. And in Finland, being a student is we all have to do the same things. We all have to play the same repertoires, and how do you say it? What I'm trying to say that is all of the students have to walk the same path, and I want to make it different. I really want to make it different.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Like forge your own path.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you so much for that. I just want to make things better, like it's natural and like it's, I don't know, enjoy it. Enjoy the path.
Yeah. All of us ladies right now are like nodding our heads like feverishly because we resonate with that. And you're right. Like, and it's wonderful that music schools have a certain curriculum, but maybe what I'm hearing from you, Sana, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but sometimes like because that curriculum is so vigorous and it's so demanding that maybe like I can only speak for myself, but sometimes like I know through the different programs that I've gone through, you kind of lose why you're doing it, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, like this isn't enjoyable for me anymore. Like, why am I doing something that, you know, that I've lost a love for in certain seasons, right? And when it's a
Exactly.
certain way and it's so strict, it's like, huh. And music isn't that at all. I mean, yes, we have to play the notes on the page and play in tune, but if that's the only objective, then I don't know about you, but like my heart can't be in it completely. And it's sad, you know? And I actually had to rekindle with music after my doctoral degree. I'm like, oh, and then by doing that, like my performance anxiety went down. I was doing it for me. I was doing it for the listener. I wasn't doing it for the curriculum and a jury and a grade. And all that pressure was just like, oh, it was lifted off my shoulders. I'm like, oh, this is how I serve. This is how I share. This is how I express myself. And so what I'm hearing you say, Sana, is like you've rekindled that love, right? From coming back to it. And you're like, I want to give that to my students and to my daughter someday.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what I'm hearing. And so kudos to you because all of us ladies are like, yeah, yeah. And we're shaking our heads and putting thumbs up. And I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't mind if you put those words in my mouth because that was what I was trying to say, really. Just couldn't get it out from my mouth.
I love that you want to bring joy to back to the music curriculum in your country. That's what I am getting from you, and it felt emotional. And I don't know if you were feeling that, but I got that from you. You have a tremendous amount of emotion that you want to share, and that's going to keep you going, and that's what's driving you. And I love that you've come to this, and despite all of the restrictions that we put on ourselves or perhaps society puts on us because of age. I've noticed that there's a few of us on here who are older, but still, fighting to remain relevant and to find new relevance in the music community where youth is still king often. So congratulations. I'm really impressed by your drive and your passion for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jay. Thank you. I'm trying to build something here. Then I can give it to my daughter or maybe somebody else, and connecting to you, all of you there, wonderful ladies, and the full world outside of Finland. It's amazing. And since we don't have really that kind of community here, I'm from a small town, and the circle is really small. This is incredible to have you, to hear you, to see you, to feel you, and especially learn from you. This is all what I'm gonna get to myself, and how do you say it? I'm getting it myself and use use it.
Mm.
You want to inspire others.
Yeah, and share it to all other people.
I love that. It's phenomenal. And I can feel, and like you said, oh my goodness, this is why I love speaking with people from all walks of life and from all cultures and languages and everything, because the way you describe that sauna, nobody else can describe what you just put out there. You're just so like heartfelt. And you said in a very unique way, like, I feel you. I'm taking you in. I love being here. And when you said I feel you, I'm like, yes, I feel the energy of the six ladies. And actually the funny thing is, have you noticed even in while you've been speaking, being 20 minutes into this conversation, we're all getting more familiar with each other. We're all just kind of like relaxing, and just your beautiful energy, Sana, just helped. I mean, everybody's contributing to this, but just your eloquent words and just your beauty and just how you're making us feel so comfortable. And we're now like putting our, letting our hair down a little bit more. We're giggling more. We're nodding our heads more. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you're
Yeah.
right. You're right. It is a
Exactly.
community. It is a community. And this is the main thing. Like, and I've said this like, or I try to say it not too much so I don't sound like a broken record week to week, but this is why I do what I do. From interaction, just from this room, from interaction, whether it's 5 women from across the globe or one-on-one with me and just one guest, or me and a listener through an email, from interaction comes inspiration. We cannot do it alone. So whether you are putting together a studio like Kiera in Miami, or an album like Jay, or you are building something, Sana, for your daughter and for future students, and Liz and Paula are going to talk about their opportunities here in a second. No matter what you're building, we cannot do it alone. And when we
No.
come together like this, like how special, what a blessing it is. And like I said before the call, I told the 5 ladies, I'm like, without me like potentially crying my eyes out and making a fool of myself, like, this is why I do what I do. And I cannot do it without guys like you, and we're in this together. It doesn't matter if you are 20, 30, 40 coming to the flute for the first time, 20, 30, 40 in a professional playing in an orchestra, or you're putting together an album with newly commissioned works, or you're putting together a podcast, a studio, a website. It doesn't matter. We cannot do it alone. And not only that, but then like coming into the same virtual space and sharing these nuggets and these gems and feeding off of each other. That's how we grow. So I am so inspired, and I know that the other ladies in this room are so inspired too, because I felt it. All of our hearts were just like jumping for joy.
And I am jumping on my chair because I am so excited. I'm so nervous that I can't really get those words out of my mouth because I'm just like, whoa, oh my, I'm here with these all wonderful ladies, and I can share all these feelings, and I can get those feelings from them. So this is very exciting, really. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh yeah. And even though this is episode 200, I still get nervous. So trust me. Butterflies in the stomach, never really go away, but you can say, "Oh, okay, hi butterflies," and recognize it. But yeah, I've learned to just get used to the butterflies because it's 200 episodes later and I still get nervous. So that is totally normal. I love it. So Ms. Paula, what opportunities are you pursuing right now, and what steps are you taking to achieve X goal?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I'm president of Texas Flute Society. So I fully believe that when you're immersed in something that you love and that you're genuine about it, that those opportunities will come to you, even if you have to create those opportunities. I got involved with Texas Flute Society from a class member of mine. He was on the board. And I asked him, how do you get involved with something like this? And he was like, oh, we're actually looking for someone. I was like, oh, okay, great. So I was the publicity coordinator, and that was a whole lot of fun. I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned along the way. Yeah, and I really believe in Texas Flute Society. So it it's so easy to do the work. I mean, it is hard work, but it's easy to do the work. It's easy to be communicative and just showing up, asking questions if you don't know something. And I'm so happy to be president now, because I feel like I can show up and be communicative and help the board and our community. So it's really, really exciting. I'm also doing some social media work for Kathy Blocky. And again, I totally adore her. And I'm just immersed in her work and what I love about that work. And that helps me to show up and be communicative and help her out with that social media aspect.
Oh my goodness. I love all of that. And you are doing phenomenal work, Paula. Like, Paula will not toot her own horn, but I will toot it for her because she is so kind and warm. And as I've been getting to know her these past, like, it's been a while, like 3 or 4 years, she just gives so much of herself. And you are doing phenomenal work through TFS, and so is the board through like the fall events, the spring events, the actual flute festival, bringing amazing women. Like this year for TFS's May 2022 festival, you have Helen Blackburn, who I adore, and Valerie Coleman as your two guest artists. And Valerie Coleman is, oh my gosh, she's an entrepreneur. She's a composer. She established her Amani Winds. I mean, what a force, right? And you get to contribute to that and organize these events, and hats off to you. And something that I'm noticing so far with all of these answers is, have you noticed all of us have mentioned somebody that we are working alongside or aspiring to be, or we're pulling these people into our orbit? Kira said, Catherine Eminent, and Jay is talking about these hip hop, R&B, heavy metal artists. She's pulling them in. Sana's talking about her teachers at the conservatory, pulling them in. Paula's like, I am floored with Kathy Blocky, and I believe in what she's doing. Do you see? We can't do it alone. And Paula, I loved what you said of this nugget of, if it's work that you believe in, right? It is still hard, but it almost comes off as easy because it's what you believe in. It's what you want to pursue, right? And I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Liz, you've been very patient and polite. The floor is yours. I met Liz through an email through Flute 360. She was so kind to email me, and she told me of everything that she's doing. And speaking of not crying, when I think of Liz and her story and her testimony and how she's just pursued it and been so diligent and in love with her studio and her work and her students, like anytime, and this is the God honest truth, anytime, Liz, and we've been corresponding for a good year now, right, Liz?
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anytime I want to give up, I kid you not, I save all of Liz's emails because she talks about her journey, and I go back to them like, okay, if Liz can do it, I can do it. Keep going. So I want you to know that I don't take that for granted.
Thank you. And I need to start because I want to speak to Sona, because I didn't have a flute until I was 40. I had done a little piano at school, but I wanted to play the flute. I was passionate about it. And it was since I was 40 that things have happened to me. I've met people, and I taught my first pupil for a whole term with no charge, because I wanted to know what I could do without seeing that pupil. And that was my starting point. And I believe each one of us has a journey which is unique to us. And your journey for you will unfold. And if the passion and the desire are there, it's amazing what we can come through. And for me, my personal journey at the moment is rebuilding, because due to some circumstances, I had a serious accident, and I had a loss of memory, a loss of ability, and I had to let every one of my students go to a new teacher. And I didn't know whether I would be able to play the flute again. It was one of those situations I found myself in. And I believe that my life is led by God. And it's an utter miracle that I am back where I am. And I am rebuilding. Each student that left me has the choice to stay where they are with their new teacher. And I would be very happy with that. But if they want to come back to me in time, I will take them. And I'm rebuilding from the big bottom because I felt that I still get very tired and I still have to be very careful how much I take on. So I'm taking on the beginners with a smile, and I have 3 new beginners, and that's my starting point. And they're excited and I'm excited. And we have all sorts of things that are not fluty that come into our lessons, like we were listening to the tune, Mary Had a Little Lamb. And my little student said, my middle name's Mary. And I said, oh, my middle name's Mary too. We have something in common. Let's celebrate. And I think I'm learning there's so much more to teaching the flute. Everything that we do in life is a growing experience. And I nearly thought I would never get back to it. And I can't tell you how happy I am to be where I am now. I am at the beginning. I'm starting with beginners. And I'm still in touch with several of my students, some of whom will come back to me when I'm ready to take them back, when I'm a bit stronger. And it's so exciting what effect we have on our students' life. I had such a lovely email from my students' parents, who my student did a concerto on Monday night in our cathedral, and we couldn't video them because of performance rights, but they sent me a recording, and in that in the email they just said it was like everything that their student has learned, and they have so much respect for their own daughter and for me and for the relationship that's grown over the years, the trust and respect that we have for each other. And it's life skills. And I'm just so lucky. I'm just so lucky to be where I am today.
Oh my goodness. You are such a blessing to all of us, Liz. And your words are so eloquent and wise. There are so many wonderful gems that you said. The one thing that I want to highlight is you said, I truly believe that we all have our unique path and it's worth celebrating. And I think we can all resonate with that to some degree because we have been talking about that. Every little bit of your answers have been highlighting your uniqueness. And I've said this before, and I kind of sound a little wonky, but I kind of picture everybody being like this like walking thumb. And it's because like we all are a unique thumbprint. We all have something very unique to offer to the world. And what does that look like? And your students, Liz, are so blessed and so lucky to have you. And I'm so glad that you're sitting here with us.
I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be able at this stage to share the experience that I had. Not something I was looking for, and we'll never know what happened and why there was this unique accident. But I believe God's used it to strengthen me, and I think my teaching will be even more unique and even more different. And my desire is to pass on to the next generation of children and adults. I have some adults who are looking for something and want to play the flute. And it's just such a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to share and to hear the first note that a student plays on their head joint, or the first rhythm they create and they grasp, and the sound they make, and why they, it's just unique. I'm speechless.
Isn't that interesting how Liz's and Sana's stories are very similar in some ways? There is right?
Yeah. And we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
I think there's something in the again, like age has come up quite a bit for me. I'm older than I look, thank you to my mother's genes. I'm feeling the press of age as well, and a lot of people, especially in the flute world, if you're trying to make it in an orchestra, you don't tell people how old you are if you're past a certain age. And there's this whole mindset, if I don't get a job by the time I'm 30, I don't, like all of these artificial deadlines we put on ourselves, right? And have fallen victim to that in my own, internal dialogue of I'm not good enough, or, I have to do things a certain way. I mean, like there's some reality to some of that, but what's really inspiring is finding these stories of people who've had the courage to just start it because they feel so passionate about it. And I'm finding that really inspiring, and letting, you guys are actually, you're sharing with me is just from my point of view, I feel renewed and with a little more energy to keep going on what I'm doing, and not let that, some of that negative dialogue affect me. And I'm really moved by both you and Liz and Sanna. I really am. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Jay. And Kiara, you're kind of nodding your head and you've been very polite and patient and waiting as everybody's been popcorning around. Is there something that you would like to add to that, Kiara? Because I see you really moved by it too.
I mean, like, I just want to say that, I didn't have it easy either. I mean, I didn't have private lessons on like consistent private lessons until I got to my undergrad. And some of the listeners may not know this, but I also have a twin sister who also plays the flute. And my sister and I, we had to go through like a lot of things together. Like towards the end of my undergrad, my grandma got sick. So we had to like take turns and taking care of when I was going through both rounds of my grad school auditions, both my nephew and my older niece were born. And then halfway through my master's, unfortunately, my dad passed away from cancer. And my sister and I both, we really wanted for both of our master's recitals to dedicate a work that my dad would have liked. And unfortunately, that opportunity was taken away from us because of COVID. So, and then like performances like canceling and stuff, like at the beginning of the pandemic, at least for me, it made me feel like, how am I going to go back on stage again? How am I going to? And I've noticed that since COVID has started, that my performance anxiety has kind of started to come back to what it was like maybe like 8 years ago. That it got to a point that it was so bad that I actually dreaded performing. And I was very pleased when this friend of mine like offered this gig to me, because I haven't stepped on a stage since I played at Mid-South 2020 with my school's flute choir. And like I kind of got like teary-eyed when I started hearing about Sanna and Liz's stories, because like it's like what you guys were saying earlier. Everybody has their own path. Everybody has their own journey, and not everybody's journey is linear or straightforward. Like everybody has had to go through like sorts of curveballs that life throws at you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you're right, Kiara. Like everything that we're kind of saying, just meshing it together in a mixing bowl so that way everyone can see what's going on in my head. But whether it's an illness, right? And you're right, like paths aren't linear, right? Like Sana, she was like, I came back to it, and I'm so glad you did, because Sana, you're going to be able to contribute so much to our musical world, right? Life happened, right? And not having the answers like that Jay wanted and was searching, and she had to find them herself or for herself, right? And I'm so sorry to hear about, loss of family. Kiara, my heart goes out to you. Life happens, right? So we're all noticing that these moments in our lives happen because we're human. We're not a robot living in a bubble. But the thing that I want to highlight is that you all have mentioned this, and I want to toot all of your horns. You are still showing up through the hardship and saying, okay, that season was kind of a bit bumpy. It's a little bit of, a little rocky. What can I do? What answers can I find? Who can I pull into my orbit to make this happen for me, for my daughter, for the next generation? Like Liz was saying, what can I give to my students and the next generation? And you find solutions because you ladies, from what I'm hearing and what I can feel, is you are so courageous and brave. And that to me is going to add fuel to me and add, how do I want to say this? Add gas to my fire for many months and years to come. And yeah, and that's what we need to talk about is like, how do we persevere? How do we still stay driven, right? When we hit those bumps. And I think even having these conversations, right? And coming together and kind of putting on our creative cap and saying, oh, okay, interesting. And that's what I said, circling back to what I had mentioned earlier with Liz. Liz was so candid and open with me for the past year of things that were happening in her life. And I saved those emails because, like, I need to be reminded, like, oh, wow, I need to be reminded of that bravery and that courage and the willingness to still show up when things get dark and dim. And that's what people do for each other. This is exactly what Sana was saying earlier. Like, there's really not a community in the small town where she lives in Finland, but she's making a community. You've put a step forward or foot forward, Sana, and saying, I'm going to be a part of this group today in this talk today to pull people into my orbit, to build that community for myself. If it's not here in Finland, that's okay. I'm going to show up for myself today and be in a virtual room and talk with women from all parts of the world to have this conversation together. So that was me blabbering, hopefully in a good way, but that was me trying to pull together everything that's happening and find this common thread because we are saying, as a collective whole, a lot of very similar nuggets. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's wrap up this wonderful conversation with one last question. And it's for the Flute 360 listener out there who may have just found the show for the first time, because Sana said she found it a month ago. And I know, Kiera, you've been listening for quite some time. So if there's like a Jane or a Joe or a Maria or a Jose who's popping in for the first time and they're listening to you wonderful ladies and they're like, oh, wow, we're on episode 200. There's 200 episodes. Where do I start? I want to know your favorite episode. So if you have that ready and handy to share, feel free to mention what that episode is so that way this new listener can start maybe with that content. So let's start with you, Liz. Is there a particular episode that you really enjoyed?
There is, and I just flipped to the right file at that moment, so thank you. I loved, absolutely go back to and re-listen to what does playing expressively mean to you. And her name was Rachel, I haven't got her surname, and it's podcast 129. And she just unlocks every gate to your heart so that you can teach your students and yourselves how to play fearlessly with expression. Kiera, I think you'd love it.
Nice. Oh my goodness. I love that. Thank you, Liz. And her last name is Mellis. So it's Rachel Mellis. And that was a phenomenal episode. I completely agree.
It was. And I listened to it this week and written more notes, but I really felt I was sitting between the two of you. I was like, could almost touch you with the expressions, and there were times when you both had the same view on something that had recently come to you both. I can't highlight which one that was now, but the way the podcast ran, it just does unlock so many things for us. and the way in which Rachel spoke with such expression, and then Heidi would come tootling back, and it was just beautiful, Heidi, absolutely beautiful, and so good for every flautist in the world to listen to.
Oh, thank you so much. And actually, I remember that episode quite well. Rachel and I are good friends, and so she made me feel comfortable. And that's why I maybe what I'm hearing from you, Liz, is like you felt that intimacy. And then, like you said, you're like, oh, I felt like I was sitting right between Heidi and Rachel.
I did.
That is literally like, y'all can't see this right now, but that is literally like goosebumps on like my arms, my legs, the back of my neck, everything, because that's what podcasting can do,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have to be scripted. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be two friends talking about real things. And Liz, you said it beautifully, like it was so heartfelt. And she talked about like how you can help your students to express themselves musically. But it was in this very intimate way, and I'm so glad. I feel like my job is done when I hear those words, Liz, when you said, "I felt like I was sitting between the two of you." That is like, woo like a huge woohoo moment for me, a huge wow moment for me, because that's what I love. That's why I love podcasting, because we're sharing content, but it's from friends, and it's this really beautiful place.
And it's the openness and the honest way in which you talked and delivered that podcast.
Mm.
And yeah, well,
I love it.
That's mine. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Liz. And Paula, what is your favorite episode?
So, Heidi, I want to share two because I was on episode 56 with my master's flute pedagogy class. So I love listening back to that one. And my second one is episode 90, I believe, an interview with Kathy Blocky, creator of Kinderflute. She's been on 7 different Flute 360 podcasts episodes, but I love this one especially because she explains her research, because Kinderflute was heavily researched and her methods actually influence the way many of us teachers teach. Like, even if we don't realize it, we're using something of hers, and it's amazing.
You're right. Kathy is a godsend in my life, and it sounds like she's a godsend to you too. She is the most featured guest on Flute 360. She's been on the show 7 times. You're right. You've done your homework. And I feel like you know the show better than I do. And it's because she brings so much to the community as a performer, as a teacher, as an author. And if I will totally back up any one of her 7 episodes, like you said, Paula, because she literally is like the epitome of what it means to be a musicpreneur. Like, if you want to forge your own path, look at, the Kathy Blockies of the world. She's a shining example of that, because she's like, oh, I don't really care so much about how maybe this is taught or this method is taught. And maybe the Rubink book is a little outdated. I will write my own Blocky Flute series book. And she's still writing. And I think she's like 60, 65 years old. And she's still contributing and writing books into the community. And I told Kathy, I'm like, are you tired yet? Because if I wrote one book, I would be like, all right, I'm done. But she's written like 10 plus, and she's not stopping anytime soon. And so you're right. I'm not going to ramble, but I couldn't agree more, Paula. And Sana, what episode impacted you, and what episode would you like to share with the listener today?
Well, these few, what I have listened and shared with others, the episode 196, Lisa Nelson. That was amazing, really. I played it twice.
I remember you telling me.
Yeah. The way Lisa spoke about playing flute and being yourself and all the stuff. What is important. That was really good. The first time I listened it, I was sitting at the porch. Sun was shining very warmly, and I didn't hear anything else. It was just the podcast and the episode and the speak. And it felt like I was sitting with you two guys at the same room. And the second time that I play it, I try to get more out of it. And every time I get something more. That was so good. That was so good episode. And well, there was other one was, I can't remember what it was, but it 188. Let me check it out. Yeah. How do you spell that?
Mermelstein.
Yeah, that was also very good. But these few what I have listened to, this Lisa Nelson was the best, really.
Oh,
Sana, I've had the joy of seeing Lisa Nelson in person teaching some master classes because she comes to Toronto fairly regularly. And she really is just as wonderful in person, and more so. She's a phenomenal educator and performer, and she really helps, even just watching as an audience member and as a performer myself. I got, a lot out of that as well. And so she really is fabulous.
The way she speaks, it's so warm, and so it's like my mom is talking to me. But
it's very encouraging.
So yeah, absolutely amazing. I just couldn't stop playing it all the way round and around and around.
I love that.
But I bet these all of your episodes are great. I don't have the time to hear all of them yet, but I am gonna do that.
There's 200 of them.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I love that, Sana. And if you don't mind me saying, you brought up a good point. In order to grab more of the nuggets that Lisa was sharing, you listen to it on repeat and you get something new every time.
Yeah.
That is so true, because right now, like being in this seat of being a host and listening and letting you guys talk, I hear certain things. But then when I listen to it during the editing phase, I listen to something and I hear something, some nugget, some knowledge dropped in a whole different way. Then the third time when I hear the episode and I'm doing show notes and timestamps and putting it up on the website, I hear something completely different. And then the day that it airs, I sit and do my makeup in the morning, listen to it a fourth time, and I'm hearing things I've never heard the 3 other times. And that's why I feel like I've received a 4th or 5th degree because of this podcast, what it's given to me, and the blessings that it's put on my life from people like you and sharing your perspectives and your experiences and things like that. And that's what I want to give to all generations. Because like what Jay had said earlier, there are people here in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever age group, right? And no matter where you are on your path and your musical path, you can pull something from what Elisa said, in that particular season, and it could resonate with you in a certain way. But then if you listen to that same episode, Sana, with what you were saying, if you listen to Lisa's episode maybe a month from now or 2 months from now, you're like, whoa, okay, that kind of like stirs me up a little bit differently, or I'm able to connect dots in a different way because you're now in a new season. And now some of that information sits differently with you. So anyways, I'm geeking out over here just because I just love connecting the dots, but that's so wonderful. And thank you for listening. And there was something else, but I'm going to put a pin in it and move on to Jay. But, I just remembered it real quick. What I heard all of you say, like Liz and Sana, you said something, and I kind of want to like ask you real quick. I know we're wrapping up, but Liz and Sana, you both said something that was very interesting. It was not just the content and how Rachel or how Lisa delivered it, right? But it was also the energy. What I'm hearing you guys say is like the energy and the intimacy between maybe myself and the listener, or I'm sorry, myself and the guest. So it sounds like feeling comfortable, right, in that space with us is a big deal to you. Can you tell me why? Like, I'm just kind of curious. I want to play with you a little bit because, like, I think you've hit on a really important topic and a really important point. It's not just the information, right? But it's the relationship, or is it something else?
I think it is the relationship, but it links back for me to Rachel and her saying that you need to be comfortable with yourself and be comfortable with your performance. So often we're not.
Mm.
That is a great point, Liz. Really great.
I'll have to dissect this later and let my brain and everything kind of go through it. But thank you for sharing that you feel like you are sitting between me and the guest, that you feel what I'm hearing you say is you feel comfortable and you feel included in the conversation, or you feel like you're a part of it. And that means the world to me because I want you to feel included and a part of it because I wouldn't be doing it if you didn't feel that way. I mean, that's one of my goals is to make you feel like you are in the room with us. And hearing you say that is just music to my ears. So, anyways, I'm going to let that stew in my brain later, but I just wanted to point that out because that means a lot to me.
Good.
So,
Good.
Jay, what's an episode that has impacted you?
I'm still a little new to Flute 360 as well, but I know that your episode with Elizabeth Rom, who I know, of course, but that was episode 185. She's a pioneer, I think, in many ways that she doesn't realize she is, or she knows, but she just gets on with things. But she came to composition after stopping playing because it was too much for both her and her husband to be both playing and then raising the kids. So from the point of view of a woman and a mother and the many different ways that the women who have children have to, want to, but also need to find their way through being artists as well as parents. It's a challenging journey, but she was also coming up through a time when women weren't allowed to open up bank accounts for themselves. They weren't allowed to have mortgages. She traveled from the States to Canada, but her husband had gone on ahead because he had a job and she had to cross the border, but she needed a letter of permission from her husband to do that. Like she's still alive. So this is not, 200 years ago. This is still within our lifetime. And she just persevered and found the passion for composition that she didn't even realize she had. And again, she was older and had, the 3 kids and dealing with that. And she realized, wow, why didn't I ever have this before? There were no women composers that she knew of ahead of her to give her the impetus or the encouragement to say, well, this is something that I can do. She just, somebody said, well, why don't you write? What do you mean me composed? And she said, well, okay, I'll give it a try. So she's another pioneer. And so I find that one, particularly, useful and charming for me. But also she's kind of a force of nature herself. And I have the privilege of seeing her every week and playing with her as well. So her story is really fascinating.
She is a pioneer and a force of nature, and I love that. And I remember that very specific moment too in the interview, and she said that she didn't know she could compose. She thought that was for like the elite, or it was for men, or it was for somebody else who was deemed to be a composer. And she came to this realization like, what, I can compose? Okay, let me try it on. And here she is, like putting out phenomenal works into our canon. And it's like, oh my goodness, like exactly what you said, Jay, of juggling being a mother and being a teacher and a composer and an oboist, right? And trying to figure out that balance and still coming, raising a family and then saying, okay, I'm going to go back to music and make this, a priority. And again, it all goes in waves. And that's something that we've hit on today, right? There's ups and downs of the world and our life and our journey, but she's a very good example of being, again, just like you ladies, being brave and being courageous and saying, okay, I'm going to go back to something that I'm very passionate about. And what do I have to do to get there and to make it happen? I love that. And Kiera, what is an episode that you would like to share with the listener today?
So the first episode that pops up in my head is the episode that you did with Katie Masad, which was episode 75. Because I started listening to both Flute Unscripted and Flute 360 around the same time. And you guys were like among the first flute podcasts that I started listening to. So I thought it was great that you guys collaborated on each other's podcast and telling your stories about how you built both of your podcasts.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, Katie is amazing. Oh my goodness. In that episode, I learned so much from her, and she has such a warm nature that I'm so glad to hear that that was one of your favorites. I adore Katie.
No, she's a really nice person.
Yeah, she is. And she's doing phenomenal work in New York through Flute Center of New York with Phil Unger. And I'm so appreciative to have partnered with them. I love making new friends.
Me too.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, we've talked about a lot today. A lot. And I loved hearing your stories. Thank you for sharing with the listeners the different avenues and opportunities that you're taking upon for your career and for your life. And I could not be happier with the conversation and for you to carve out time to contribute and to offer your knowledge and wisdom and to be an inspiring force for other Flute 360 listeners is just beyond me. So one, thank you for doing that. Thank you for carving out time. Thank you for being honest and vulnerable. And thank you for sharing that space with me.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah, amazing. Have a phenomenal rest of your day or whatever part you have left. I know it's getting later in the day for Liz and Sana, but it was so wonderful to see your beautiful shining faces. And I encourage all of you. I mean, you guys are such pioneers and go-getters. Take it upon yourself, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but take it upon yourself for the 5 of you to start cultivating a new relationship. And for the listeners out there listening to Liz and Paula and Sana and Jay and Kiera, reach out to them, build a community. What can you and another flutist from Africa, China, Australia create together? You know, one of the silver linings of the pandemic was that we could be and utilize this virtual world. And if you do, like, say you're Joe and you're listening to Paula and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I would love to do something with Paula. Or you're listening to something that Jay has to offer and you're like, oh my goodness, she really got the wheels turning in my brain. Maybe I could collaborate with Jay or Kiera or Sana or Liz. Reach out to each other. This is the whole point of all of this, is to build this beautiful network and build these relationships, because I want to see more digital music courses being put out there, more flute albums being put out there, new compositions for our flute library, right? But that starts with us. That starts with a Joe and a Paula and a Maria and a Jane. And do you know what I mean? So, anyways, that's me on my soapbox. I'll get down. But when I see people come together and sparks are being lit, right? I want that fire to still be ignited. I don't want it to stop here. And I encourage everybody to reach out to each other and start making those collaborations happen.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for carving out time, and yeah, be well.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. It was really nice to meet you all. Thank
Yes.
you.
You too. Yes.
Thank you so much for tuning into episode 200. What a celebration. I couldn't have done it without you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a supporter And I hope that you get to share this episode with a student, a friend, and or a colleague. I hope you get to reach out to these 5 amazing women. Reach out to them. Tell them how their stories impacted you. It would totally light up their day. As a friendly reminder, episode 201 is going to air on April 19th, 2022, and it's all about building collaborative relationships. Check it out. I hope you like it. And we are going to take a small break from the podcast so that way I can rest, recoup, and start getting the wheels in my head turning for year 5. We are going to pick up the podcast and its content beginning May 24th, 2022. So it's just a very small break so that way we can regroup and start afresh. Thank you again and have a great day. Let's talk about Flute.